was kind of violent. Hello and welcome to the Koala Community Group meeting where we developed the Transparency Exchange API. We have a small group today. Welcome. I'll make a note here of who we are. We have no newcomers, so let's move on to information from ECMA TC54. Do you have any updates, Steve?
No updates. There is a meeting, I believe it's next week. So the monthly TC54 meeting is next week, next Thursday, I believe it is. And I'm hoping to have a update for them regarding the documentation. So I've been experimenting a little bit with different types of docs. So that's kind of ongoing. And then we have within CLE, we actually have pretty much defined what our scope is going to be. So Benji has a task to create a or was that me? I can't remember. I guess I should look at the notes. One of us has a task to create a scope that could be presented to TC54 for consideration.
Cool. And what about the package URL group, package URL verse?
Package URL and verse is coming along. We've had a few meetings thus far. We've gotten some more contributors from large profile organizations to participate. I believe the update I provided last time hasn't really changed in terms of, we merged VERS. We have some few outstanding things in there. We're using Perl as the testing ground, essentially, for testing our new documentation generation process. So that is kind of ongoing. We have essentially prioritized standardizing Perl, standardizing VERS, and then the Perl types, kind of in that order, is what I recall.
Cool. On a related topic, we had a meeting in the SBOM forum vulnerability group, which also probably needs a scope and so on. But during that meeting, I tried to sort up the discussion and created this picture, which may be of interest here as well, because we discussed how package URL fits into automatic vulnerability management and where things are missing. And even though the CV format supports package URLs, it's not really used by anyone. And one of the issues is, how does a customer, an owner of a hardware or software, get the package URL? Well, I added another explanation where I think, from my view, T fits in, where the producer publish one or multiple identifiers, TIs, and one single product can have many TIs that through discovery leads to the API. And in our API, we can get lifecycle enumeration data and SBOMs and other artifacts. But in the SBOM, you'll find the package URL you need, both for the actual product, but also for dependencies. And that takes you into this loop. And we do have support for package URLs in the SBOMs, but manufacturers needs to be in control here. We believe it's a problem that CPEs are created by a third party, not the actual project or manufacturer. So I think that's important. But there were a lot of discussion on this area that, Perl doesn't support commercial software. And I kept repeating, we have SWID. Then they looped on to the App Store. I said, well, fine, we can get any contributions to the Perl working group. They're writing specifications right now. And I think you say the same on the mailing list, Steve.
Yeah, it's frustrating when the same misinformation continues to get propagated.
Yes, I think so
yeah.
too. So I created that picture, and I think some people understood it and tried to get the structure, but it's kind of important to see where our work here fits in the grand scheme. So I'll make a copy of that and put in the notes as well.
But remember, Ole, that any avalanche starts with a couple of pebbles.
I keep throwing pebbles everywhere.
Yeah.
So, trying to mark our territory here. On that note, other events groups, we had a discussion a few meetings ago on the CISA sharing of SPOM working group with Dimitri. I haven't seen him since, so we have that on hold. ITF's Kit had a meeting that was cancelled 2 days ago, Monday, but I've been regularly in contact with them, so I think we're pretty much aligned and don't step on each other's toes, and we need to find out how things work together. So I'll continue that discussion. SPDX have general meetings. I've been trying to get us in there with a Pebble, and we're going to have a meeting late this month discussing that. And I think, Steve, you had a meeting with OpenSSF. Which group was that? Was it the vulnerability something, or?
I haven't had a meeting with OpenSSF in quite a while, actually.
The tools, I think you presented in the tools group a few months back.
Right.
Yeah.
With Josh Bressers.
Right. Yeah, Josh invited me. Right.
At least I got a presentation there that's in our repository.
Right. Yeah.
So,
all of our presentations that we do are public in the Google Drive.
Yeah.
But
maybe we need to keep watch there and see what we can do to introduce ourselves. I heard that Krob got employed there now. He left Intel.
Yeah,
I saw that.
So we should be able to at least use him as a way in. KoalaCon, I've been a bit overloaded by normal day work, stuff that generates food and money. But what about having a brace? Yeah. Probably have too much here. But anyway, what about taking next Wednesday to have a brainstorm meeting? Maybe we should have it a bit later to see. I want to reach out to Matthias in the Dependency Track. I know Victor is interested, Victor Pettersson, and maybe some others, but we should set a date and do stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Time works for me.
Okay, so I'll put out an invitation on that. Great. And welcome, Jotam. I forgot to say that. You sneaked in here.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry for being late.
Good seeing you again.
Likewise. Sorry, it's Israel. Crazy times.
Oh. Yeah.
Really? Is there something going on there?
Oh.
Nothing major. Nothing that we're not used to.
No, it's scary.
Yeah.
So we have some administrative work I'm keeping track of here on the agenda, but we also have issues on them. I'll start. I had a discussion with a guy in the ITF, so I think it should be fairly easy to register these, considering the amount of documentation we have now and test code.
Before you skip to go down to that, I just want to mention that OWASP Global EU will be in Barcelona in May of 25. So we could do.
Yeah, it was my birthday.
Was it?
Yeah. May
Yeah.
15th, I believe.
Oh,
Just to
great. Maybe you can
celebrate
go to
me.
Barcelona for your birthday.
Yeah. Global AppSec Barcelona. It's a beautiful town.
Yeah. I have never been, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm still
That's the
working on the
wrong dates,
plan.
actually. That's the wrong
Okay.
dates. Yeah. It's the I don't know the dates, but the ones that were
Okay.
originally on the slide that was presented were just wrong. It's the
Aha, okay.
last, I believe it's the last week of May.
I was hoping you
Better.
would say it would be earlier because my birthday's on the 9th.
Mm.
We
How much
both have to
earlier?
celebrate
Because
in Barcelona anyway.
how much earlier? Because I'm in January, so maybe we'll get to that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, we can do a
session.
meetup there maybe, or if we want to do another KoalaCon.
I would really like to find a place. We had a meeting last week. I didn't mention that. That was Victor,
Mhm.
Andreas. Was there some? There were newcomers, so we spent most of the time for a new presentation, getting them up to speed with the stuff we had, the presentations I have, and so on and so forth. But we also discussed having a hackathon close to FOSDEM. I'm putting a lot of pressure on OWASP in various groups to register for FOSDEM and maybe have a booth and at least make sure the SBOM session is not SPDX only.
Right.
And Tony Turner contacted me on the same topic.
Yeah.
But I would like to see if we could have a hackathon because at that time in February, this is the first weekend of February, I think we should have enough to actually have some software and play around with and test interoperability and so on.
Maybe.
So if we can find a company that can sponsor something in Brussels on the days around here, that would be brilliant. Otherwise, there's a conference in London, State of OpenCon, I believe, the days after. And Victor thought he could sponsor a meeting room in London
Okay.
adjacent to that. That would be the Wednesday then after or something.
Yeah, because doesn't FOSDEM usually fall on the weekend?
FOSDEM is Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
On a university, and it's the low season, so the hotels are fairly cheap.
Right.
In Brussels, but there's I wrote here Open Source Week because there are many conferences and meetups adjacent, both before and after the weekend. I think Philip Omredam is running something on Friday before. He did last year.
Yeah, usually he runs a dev room or something, doesn't he?
I think this was outside of the university, but the dev
Oh, okay.
room was Kate Stewart.
Okay.
Mostly.
Oh, that's right. There was an SBOM dev room, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we had an SBOM dev room on Saturday, and on Sunday we had an European regulation CRA with a lot of SBOM dev room.
Right.
But I mean, in OWASP we have plenty of projects, dependency track and others, so we could actually have a half or full day dev room to present our work.
Sure. No, that sounds brilliant.
Especially, especially if Nicholas from Dependency Track is based in the UK in the new year. It's what he aspires to. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but if it did, then perhaps he could actually present there in London.
Yeah, or in Brussels at FOSDEM if we do something.
Yeah.
All of European open source developers are in Brussels that weekend. And I think it would be good for OWASP to show up at that meeting. So do
Yep.
we know any board members of OWASP? I think.
Nope.
No, okay. Sorry.
I've been pushing. I will continue to push on my side.
Good.
Let's see.
Because the applications for dev rooms and booths are open now. So it needs to get in there. I don't think it's very complex, but dev rooms is a bit more complex, but I think we can fill one easily.
Yeah, I mean, donating is just, you know, that's just a wire transfer or a credit card or whatever. And the dev room actually requires like a call for paper type of process, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to propose that. You don't need to propose all the speakers, but the topics.
Right.
So if we come up with something cool and clever with software tools for the regulated software world or blah, blah, something like that,
Right.
then we
right,
have
right.
enough from Defect Dojo down to all the CycloneDX tools and the T API.
Right. Yep. We
Cool.
are actually going to be, I need to reach out to the Defect Dojo folks, but there was an idea. It was either in our threat modeling working group or in the blueprints working group. Both groups have a need to talk about architecture. It was probably the threat modeling group though, because at the end of a threat model, you typically have a bunch of threats, right, that you've identified. And Defect Dojo has this very, very generic concept of a finding. Finding isn't necessarily a vulnerability. It could be like a, you know, some kind of risk, like in the GRC type of sense, or some other type of finding. Well, a threat can theoretically also be a finding. So we are thinking about
Interesting.
yeah, exactly. So we're gonna experiment with potentially using Defect Dojo as a way to consume CycloneDX TM bombs.
But interesting. I have a totally different idea, but okay, let's take that. That's another
Yeah.
project. But I suddenly need to look into Defect Dojo.
Or homework, yes.
What bombs? I missed the last part of the sentence.
TM bombs, threat modeling.
Threat
tool
modeling.
materials.
For threat modeling. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's new work in another working group here.
Mm-hmm.
So would they also
I mean,
go? Sorry, would they also go into dependency track, or would you? Would it? Be
Yes,
a kind
I
of,
mean, again, I've mentioned this multiple times. I think it's just a matter of prioritizing it, Mark. But
yes.
dependency track currently only has the concept of vulnerabilities. So we need to expand that to be able to support other types of risk, as well as not only just capturing it, but representing it and accounting for other forms of risk in how we actually present that data visually. So that's a lot of work that still needs to be done, because a
Yes.
threat is not a vulnerability. They're completely different things. So we're going to need to go down that route eventually, because if CycloneDX wants to support C bombs, which I know there is active work going on, well, guess what? You're not going to have vulnerabilities in cryptographic algorithms. There's literally only 2 CVEs in the NVD for algorithms, and those are solely because they were malicious by intent. All other issues with algorithms related to cryptography are just weaknesses, right? They're just weak. They work as designed. They're just weak compared to today's standards. So you need to be able to represent that without marking them as vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of work in dependency track that needs to be done before we can start representing C-bombs, let alone, you know, threats.
Yeah, then the policy engine needs to go in there, because something that's weak in one context can be a disaster in another one.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with quantum, I mean, the focus has to be on data that you think that if exposed in 5 or 10 years time will still be dangerous. A lot of data you encrypt has no meaning after a few hours, but some data actually has. So yeah, absolutely.
One of the things we might want to investigate is that's related to the API here is we have a work stream for patents in CycloneDX currently. And there is a desire to have an external reference, possibly a little bit more, to express basic patent information. There's also a standards body, WIPO, that produces both XML and a JSON schema to represent intellectual property things, including patents, but other things as well. WIPO also has a standard that's well, the part of the standard is REST, part of it is SOAP. I cringe, but the REST part, theoretically, it would be interesting if the Transparency Exchange API, if you are getting, if you're getting information about a product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, there should be no reason why we couldn't include patent information for our legal friends, right? I mean, everything is primarily focused on inventory management with a huge focus on security, and licensing is nice and all that sort of thing. But if we truly want to bring the lawyers to the table, not only do we need to support, you know, the copyrights and you know, open source licenses, but theoretically patents as well. So good news is they have a really robust standard. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. But it might be something for us to explore and see how we can kind of, you know,
from the
possibly
API
fit that in.
standpoint, I'm trying to keep the eye very open for various kinds of attestations. We may need new types. So far, we refer to the CycloneDX types. We need to check. But I mean, in the list of artifacts, I included deliberately the certificate of conformance with the EU CE mark, which means the CRA. That's one attestation, which is properly just a PDF. But that's kind of legal document, as you say. So patents would fit into that. But if we can find a standard format so people can parse it and use it automatically alongside with other risks data, that would be awesome. I should glance a bit. IETF has a huge process for that, but I don't know how that works. But okay, anything else? No. So I created a lot of issues today because status-wise, I removed that picture because I needed to take notes. I think we are here that the generic models, we have proposals, they are documented, but we need to review them in the group and make sure they fit together. While writing some test code for the collections, I realized that there's probably a few things missing or explanations missing. We need to start writing those. On the consumer API side, we have an early, I would say, We have flows, but we have a very early version of an API spec. We need to work on that. We haven't written any security architecture. I have a pull request with some ideas on using digital signatures. I will discuss digital signatures a bit more with the SCIT working group and some other groups to see if we can have some joint view on how to handle this. For authentication authorization, I have one slide exactly here that we discussed a number of times, but I need to make markdown text so we have something to work on in the spec. For the publisher side, Chris from Down Under wrote a flow that I think is really good. And we also have some ideas on the API. But we haven't started a lot of stuff there. We focus quite a lot on the consumer side. However, I didn't mention that, sorry. On Friday evening, we had a meeting with Apache, a couple of Apache projects and security group, me and Anthony, and discussed how the T platform fits in where they are. And we need to consider that they are doing everything in the open. And they said that we have SBOMs on the file system where we publish them, and we would like Koala to use that. So I added a ticket, so we add that as a use case. But they're very, very interested in working with Koala. They couldn't participate today, but I think we'll see them showing up. But we will have a continuous dialogue with them. Just for reference, when they first contacted me, Piotr, he's been in this group as well. He quietly said, well, you know, Log4j, we started all of this, so we have to participate in cleaning up. And he was in Stockholm for my conference as well. Very nice gentleman. But he's on dancing lessons with his daughter right now, so he couldn't participate. So we have interest from many groups, and I think that's brilliant. We just need to work on. In the meeting last week, Victor brought up DNS redirection in the discovery document. So I opened a ticket on that. I will have to query the DNS experts that I work regularly with a little bit of what's possible here. I know there are some crazy rules around the HTTP URI DNS records we use. So I don't know if CNAME works with that, but if we don't have that, we need CNAMEs. But then we need to document how we validate the TLS certificate. Because if I'm starting with a URL to products example com and I get a CNAME to products example org, should I get a certificate for example com or example org? I mean, that kind of stuff we need to document. And there are IETF RFCs on it.
Okay.
When looking at the various data structures, I saw that I stolen some ideas from CycloneDX, added author on almost every object. And we need to define and ask you all to review and see, do we need the author or is it just the organization we're after? Do we need to tie objects to a single person? When it comes to artifacts, maybe, for instance, the European Certificate of Conformance is signed by a single person. But otherwise, we need to figure out what this means. So look into the tracker and see if we can come up something. I'll add some data to the tickets examples. In our last meeting in this group, we went through the sequence diagram and we got a query for a diagram that starts with a known version. Like if the software within the software graphical user interface shows a TI for discovery, then the software actually knows the version. And I documented that it's possible, but it's not clear in the spec, and we haven't got a sequence diagram. Because with a known version, we can shortcut a bit of the discovery and jump to the right T collection quite quickly.
We still have to go through the rest of the diagram though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But the TAE will have an option that will automatically sort you through some of the stuff, I think. Victor had an interesting question. We added a flag to the collection on pre-release status. We didn't bother with release candidates and all that. We just grouped them all together. But in my head, the assumption was that one specific version is a pre-release, and after testing, we release something else with a new version number that is not a pre-release. But Victor had a use case where he created a release, and after testing, that container, that component, in the exact form as is, if it passed the test, was promoted to production with the same version number.
Yep.
So we have two different use cases documented there. So the basic question is, can we turn off a pre-release flag, or should we have two different flags? Say one saying this version will always be a pre-release or a beta or something, or and another flag saying testing on component under testing, wait, or something.
Yeah, I would make that personally, I would make that pre-release flag changeable. And then add that to the possible use cases in CLE. That's really a life cycle event.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need an operation to be able to change that status.
Right. No, that's just a Boolean, right? It's just a flag.
Yeah. As of now,
Right.
it's just a Boolean.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Mark, do you have any opinion? Yeah.
No, I'm good. I was just thinking about the number of open source projects which go through like 30 or 40 versions and never ever get to version 1.0.0.
Yeah, the
I-
100
Yeah.
anxiety is everywhere. Should we?
JSON schema is the most obvious.
Sorry, what's that?
I said JSON schema
Yeah,
is the most obvious.
Oh, right, yes.
Should we allow this flag to be turned on after creation or just turned off? Should a release be able to be promoted to a pre-release? Or is it just one way?
Um,
Say Oops, this release didn't work. I'm turning on pre-release flag for now. Wouldn't that be confusing for people?
You know, we might want to consider, instead of a Boolean, we might want to consider just a enumeration. I'm thinking of a use case where technically, you know, the software is released, but nobody ever has access to it. Right? Because it's like in a cloud environment, right? Just because you have continuous um, delivery doesn't mean you have continuous deployment.
No. And we created releases in projects at work that never got out to customers.
Right.
Because product managers were, I don't know, they didn't do it.
Yeah, but they would still have the release flags. Sorry, they wouldn't have the pre-release flag set, would they?
No, it was after beta testing, so no. That was production. But what would be the enumeration here?
I don't know. I mean, we're starting to get into CLE territory here if we talk about general availability.
What I mean, there are two things I would like to see when I see tea leaves. One is whether this is a killed release. We have vulnerabilities, this release is replaced by something else.
Right.
And another thing I would like to see in the overview is if it's a beta, pre-release, or release candidate, something that is not recommended by the manufacturer for production use yet.
Yeah. I'm thinking
those are two flags I see personally I would like to see.
Yeah, so the first one was what again?
Whether a version is killed by VEX. Let's say we have a vulnerability. We can't fix it in this release. So this release is replaced by something else. Do not install. A death skull.
Right. Yeah, keeping it. I'm going in my own mind. I'm going down through a couple different rabbit holes.
Shall we send this over to the LC group and see if they can wrap their heads around it?
Well, I think they're keeping the scope fairly tight right now.
Okay.
So I don't believe there's appetite for a lot of other discussions. There's you know, we've defined essentially what the minimal viable is going to be, and that's kind of what we're proceeding with the idea that we'll be able to have a framework that allows us to expand upon that in the future.
That's good that you managed that, because they were all over the place.
Yeah, because otherwise there's so many different life cycle events that you'd never finish.
I don't know about you, but as a consumer, I'd be a bit annoyed if something actually changed from release to pre-release, because it would seem like sort of setting that flag in order to say, well, yeah, you're experiencing problems, but what do you expect? It's pre-release. So it wasn't bloody pre-release last week.
Well, that's something we can write into the spec. Right now, we can't codify that in JSON schema. It doesn't support business rules, but we can absolutely codify that in the human readable standard.
Implementation guidelines for developers saying,
right,
do not allow this to happen. So I think we have a, I don't know if these should be combined. We have a release date, pre-release, released, and we have a usage flag where basically replaced by another version. Maybe. I can open a ticket on that so we can continue discussion on usage flag.
Okay.
But I'll copy the other information here to the ticket 44 on pre-release. Okay. I will see if we can resolve that. Going through a bit quickly, we're running out of time. Good discussion, thank you. We had no version in any specs that I created. And I think we need a version of the objects so we can actually modify them at some point. I think I added that to my implementation, but it's not of the collection, just a test. We have Christopher Gates asked a question that I captured in a ticket. Can T be used to discover new versions of something? And I think it can. I think the answer is simply yes.
Yeah.
So dependency track should, by using T, be able to inform you that, hey, this upstream vendor has published something new for you, and decide what you want to do with that. I know that there's a manual flag now for current version in dependency track. And maybe we can connect that part to the flag or something. I really like dependency tracks community meetings, by the way.
Oh, good.
Steve.
Well, you got one later on, although Nicholas won't be there.
Oh, you have one today?
That's today?
Yes, it is today.
Oh, I thought that's the maintainer's call.
Oh, my bad. Yes, my bad. It's a maintainer's call.
Okay.
Not a community call. But the community calls, I'm glad you like them. They're a lot of effort. And I actually still have to publish the chapters, you know, the timestamps for the last video from last week.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I could only join for a part. When you started talking about October, I had to leave, sorry, but I think it's a very, very good format.
Yeah, yeah, and that Hacktoberfest actually turned out to be quite useful because we've had so many contributors like comment on issues saying, under the terms of Hacktoberfest, can you assign this to me? And we're already getting PR as a result. So, you know, that can actually work with any project. It happens to be a dependency track, but I think that there's, is it tens or over 100,000 projects signed up for it? Steve, do you know?
I have no idea how many total.
Well, whatever. We seem to be gaining from it. So yeah. And as I said, it was covered in the community meetings. And I think the value of those is when you want to see something and you actually go back to a video from 6 months ago that you might already have seen twice. And with the help of the timestamps, you can jump to the little 2-minute section that you need to watch.
Yeah, it must be a lot of preparation for the demos because they seldom fail. I'm impressed by that. So, good call.
The demo gods be kind.
No, I jinxed them. So next one will be total failure, blank screens, and yeah. Sorry for that. Anyway, welcome back, Jotan. We had a bit of a discussion on the pre-release flag here. There's a ticket you can read in, ticket number 44.
Yeah. I'll take a look.
But we realized that there are two scenarios, basically. One is where you have a project where you release beta releases and release a completely new release as the production release. So the beta release candidates, they will have a pre-release flag, but you have also situations where you have a component that you put on the testing, and if testing runs well, you promote exactly the same version without changes to a production release.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be able to turn off that flag, but not turn on. So after, if you release something, you release it's not ready, realize it's not ready, and say, oops. And by accident, someone turned on the pre-release flag. That's a bad situation for customers. So
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking that this is going to be really useful, because I just remembered seeing many sort of big projects where you might have sort of 4 or 5 releases in the course of 1 week. And a human can make sense of it. You can see that there's actually like, a version 2 latest version, and a version 3 latest version, and a release candidate version 4, which actually came out just before the latest release of version 3. So the stream of events is just a continuous flow for multiple versions, with a total seemingly sort of random mix of this is a pre-release, this is an actual release. And then you get 2 more release candidates, and then you get another proper release. And so to be able to indicate which is which via a flag is going to be like really useful.
Cool. I mean, it would be interesting at some point to sit down with the pencil track and just not coding, but sketching how a user interface to all this stuff would look like, and have that with us for the KoalaCon meeting.
It's actually interesting that you say that, because just yesterday there was somebody asking, saying, can't we actually automatically sort of, in the consideration of what is the latest version, ignore anything which is marked sort of -RC, snapshot, etc. Well, with T, you don't have to, all you have to do is follow the specification.
Yeah, that would be codified for you.
Yeah.
Great. 5 minutes left. I open a few tickets because we have discussed all these objects and very quickly, and I would like to ask you all to go through them and put any feedback in these tickets, so we can bring it up in meetings and try to finalize something that work together. A lot of this have been separate efforts, and I'm not sure. I pushed all the notes from the meetings where I wrote in PowerPoints, basically. So please review them again. I'm looking at them with my code as well. But it would be good if we could start finalizing this, because we need objects and syntaxes here. Not all of them should be objects, but syntaxes for the open API spec to finalize, start doing something serious with that. As I said earlier, we've been having meetings with Apache Foundation projects, a few of them, Airflow, Log4j, and some others. And they are very interested, and I realized that in our documentation, we focus so much on a manufacturer, which in my head was a commercial manufacturer, but we've been having interest for a long time from open source projects, and we need to have that as a use. I think we have a use case, but need to document that. So I open a ticket just to make sure we can coordinate and get input. One thing that keeps popping up is that people wonder how to apply T in their CI/CD tool chains. And we haven't discussed much about publication. We have Chris outline. And in that flow, it's clear that he envisions a client, a CLI client that can be integrated into tool chains, CI/CD, GitHub workflows, GitLab workflows, and such. So I would like to just brainstorm a bit before KoalaCon, so we can show a kind of a mock or something on how this can be integrated into a workflow. So if you're interested in that or ideas, please add them to this ticket and we'll discuss them. But the publication part, I think, mostly will be integrated into CI/CD workflow. So when we tag a release, the special workflow will start and will publish the information automatically. Of course, there will be point-and-click user interfaces as well, but to really make the workflow flow in tight integration, I mean, when you have CI/CD workflows that publish a new release to the cloud every day, you can't do it manually.
Now you want to have the break before the KoalaCon, because the KoalaCon you said you were proposing the 16th, so that means time is tight for that. Do you want to propose a time for a brainstorm?
Maybe we could combine that. I mean, we have a brainstorm for setting dates and program for KoalaCon next week. So this, I mean, KoalaCon realistically, we had another date, but realistically it will be end of November now because we need marketing time. So the question is if we should invite to this. How is next week? You have the common life cycle, but we could possibly put it in after the KoalaCon brainstorm at 5 o'clock. And see if people are interested in making some slideware. What do you think about that? We can give it a try, at least.
Yeah. And Steve, you were about to say something when I interrupted you.
Oh, yeah, my brain was still on the publishing client. I think it's, while I do believe that CI/CD pipelines are important, in my experience, the vast majority of commercial software is not released that way.
Not commercial software, no.
Right, exactly. There's typically manual checks, for example, especially for major releases, like, has the technical writing team actually completed their documentation? Have all waive requests been accepted? All kinds of other types of checks that you would need to have a supported released piece of software out in the marketplace. I do believe automation is the key. I don't want to place all that focus on CI/CD automation, though. That's one part of the automation story that we need to tell. But realistically, the automation should be, we're talking about a client, should be more workflow centric. That way, it's more inclusive language. Because if the commercial vendors see, a publisher client for CI/CD tool change, they will essentially assume that it's not for them.
So we should stress that this is not the only tool. There are other ways to handle this.
Yeah.
I envision that there could be situations where you have both, because you could have these tool chains to publish to an internal server, so the compliance department and everyone can do their stuff to prepare a release. Then you have a public teapot or server where you actually end up with the final release. I don't know. Okay.
So don't you have like sort of workflows where part of it is automated and then it kind of pauses for the manual things like approval, sign off by the manager, an assertion that documentation has actually been proofread or what? So it's
I see we have work to do next Wednesday. Lovely.
Okay.
Do you have anything more we want to discussed today?
Not
We're
for
over
me.
the hour. Okay. Thank you very much for participating in QualaCon, and see you next week and the week after. I'm gonna produce invites to the 2 meetings next week and publish them in the Slack channel as usual.
Very good.
Thank you. Recording
Thanks, Ali.
off.